It's been about 2 weeks since we finished the link install on my AE86, and a lot has happened in that 2-week period. To get the car ready for the dyno, I had a little list of things that had to get done. The first one was I needed to make an exhaust system. The exhaust system that was on the car before was a real hodgepodge muffler shop type deal, and the flange at the cat was actually the original OEM AE86 exhaust flange, which is very, very tiny if you're familiar with these cars. So I needed to upgrade that to a 2.5-inch exhaust system to make sure that we weren't restricting the engine at all. Another thing that I had to do to the car to get it ready was I'm working on a new dual caliper bracket setup and hydro e-brake for the car. I've gone to the track quite a few times and the factory e-brake just really doesn't do what I need it to do, so I knew I had to upgrade to a hydro setup. What I wanted to do was come out with a bracket that reuses the original AE86 rotor and caliper and just adds a Willwood single brake caliper onto the back of it. The prototype brackets were machined and installed on the car before we got to the dyno. The hydraulic handbrake that I'm using is a Part Shop Max unit that has an integrated reservoir that mounts inside the car. I also machined a mounting bracket to put that Part Shop Max hydro handbrake in a really comfortable location that I like. After the dyno, we're not only going to be testing out the engine, but I'll be testing out that dual caliper setup and that handbrake mount as well. After we were finished tuning the car, a friend of ours also brought his AE86 to the dyno. He also has a beam setup on a Link ECU, but he has the Panic ITB setup, so it was good to get a direct comparison between the 20-valve ITBs that I have and the Panic ITBs that he has on his car, and you'll see that in the dyno graph. So let me show you what happened the last 2 weeks at the dyno and at the track. The dyno day started with a drive down to SSI, which is a Subaru and import tuning shop in Portland, Oregon. I met up with both Matt and Mark from Panic Made. Mark is going to be the one that was tuning the car. The base map that's included is a really solid start, so I knew it wouldn't be long before we were getting the car running on the rollers and making some pulls. Some of the improvements that I was looking forward to were being able to adjust the cam timing to maximize the torque and also increase the rev limiter higher than the factory ECU. Tuning an engine like this should only be done by somebody that has a lot of experience, and Mark has been tuning engines for at least a couple of decades at this point. So even though I'm the type of person that likes to be extremely hands-on with my cars, for this dyno session, I pretty much just stood back and let him do his thing. He started by adjusting all of the basic stuff like the initial startup of the engine and the tip-in of the throttles, and then started working it through the gears to make sure that all of the AFRs were safe in multiple throttle positions. After about 30 minutes of adjusting all of the boring stuff, we were actually finally able to make a pull and get a real baseline for this setup. Each consecutive full throttle pull was done after making some changes to either the ignition timing, the cam timing, or the air-fuel ratio. Each dyno graph was laid over the previous so that you can see what those changes did to affect the engine's output. After the majority of the full throttle tuning was done, then we revisited the hot start map, which is a really important part of tuning an engine. The engine will start differently whether it's cold or hot, and the ECU's ignition timing and fueling maps need to be adjusted accordingly based on the coolant temperature. After letting the engine cool off, it was time to do one final power pull to see how all of the tuning has affected the engine's horsepower and compare it to the original baseline numbers. Our original baseline pull netted 179 horsepower, while the tuned engine netted 190 wheel horsepower. Next up is our friend Danny with the Panic ITBs on his Beams engine. Let's see how it compares to the 20-valve setup. Here's the two dyno graphs overlaid. The red line is my car, the blue line is Danny's car. As you can see, they're very similar, but the Panic ITBs netted a little bit more mid-range and very top-end horsepower, with about 10 extra horsepower on the top end. 3 days later, it was time to go do some testing, so we headed back out to Spirit Peaks Raceway to meet up with some of our friends. After already driving the car a couple hundred miles before taking it to the track, I was really excited to see how it did on the track, because just driving it on the street, the performance was already greatly improved over the stock computer and stock intake manifold. My son Levin was also able to bring his car out to the track. This is his first time driving the 20-valve swapped car in the dry at Spirit, and he did an awesome job. The first lap out on the track, all I really wanted to do was make sure that the car felt solid, and also I wanted to test out the handbrake to make sure that it was working correctly. After realizing that the handbrake worked great and the car was handling good, it was time to push a little bit harder. The biggest takeaway from the first driving session was that the throttle response was way better than the stock ECU and stock intake manifold. Being able to modulate the throttle off and on rapidly was a huge improvement. The second time out on the track was more of the same, but just increasing the speed, trying to improve my line, and really getting a feel for how hard I could push the car. After the second session, I felt super confident. The car was doing everything that I needed to do. The e-brake was working perfectly. The engine was performing well. The increased rev limiter was really helping me extend the back section of the track without a lot of trouble like I was having with the stock ECU. And overall, it was just a ton of fun. So for the third session, I took Levin along with me and I showed him all of the improvements and how much more fun the car was. At this point, I was super hyped with the way that the car was driving, and I was really excited to start driving with some friends. At the end of this event, all I could think about was how much I'm falling back in love with drifting. So drifting was a huge part of my life in the early 2000s, up until about 2012 when I stopped. And it was almost a decade before I started driving again. The purpose of building this car originally was just to test some products for the company. But the more that I've done to it over the last couple of years, the more that I've realized that it really has brought me back to a time in drifting and a time in Corollas that I love the most. Now the car is finally at a point where it looks the way that I like, the car performs the way that I like, the suspension is set up, the steering is set up the way that I like, and the car is just super predictable and easy to drive. Now my goal is to basically just drive it as much as possible. The only other changes I really plan to make on this car are pretty much just some exterior changes to update the styling and probably switch to 15-inch wheels. So with that said, Let's get back over to the TE27 project. That's the one that I'm excited about.